reçu mon père. J'ai sacrifié toute ma vie pour Dieu. Remerciez Madame Forget et Monsieur Forget. Notre Père qui es aux cieux, que ton nom soit sanctifié, que ton règne vienne sur la terre comme au ciel. Donne-nous aujourd'hui notre pain de ce jour. Et délivre-nous.
After being committed to a mental hospital for 2 years, Louis Riel was still in exile for his role in the Red River Rebellion and the execution of Thomas Scott. Scott belonged to a group called Canada First, a nationalistic political movement that offered little place in Confederation for First Nations and Métis. The Métis, now of the Saskatchewan Valley, had petitioned Ottawa for years for legal claim to their land. In 1882, the Canadian government sent surveyors to the area, rising fears among Métis that their land would be taken from them once again. Métis leader at the time, Gabriel Dumont, had not been very successful at getting the Canadian government to respond to complaints. He set out to find Riel, who was teaching school at St. Peter's Mission in Montana. On July 4th, 1884, Louis Riel returned to his prairie homeland and stayed at a small house in Batoche owned by Joseph Fisher.
Don't forget, in the Manitoba Act, it says significantly that the Métis were promised 1.4 million acres of land as part of the compensation so that they could settle on that land. They never received the land, 1.4 million acres. And they said, well, you had land scrip issued after 1870 to all the Métis people around the Red River settlement. Yes, but they said, you gave us 160 acres, a piece of paper that was worth 160 acres if we could, and they, in some remote area, but they had nothing to develop the land with. And significantly enough, that the part of their argument for that case is that they brought in the Polish people, the Ukrainian people, and other Eastern European Slavic nations to occupy the land when the CPR was built. And they brought them in, and they homesteaded them, and they gave them 160 acres of land for nothing. So they're trying to say that by giving the Métis this land scrip for 160 acres, that they were extinguishing their rights as Métis people, and also it would supposedly in some remote way have accounted for that 1.4 million acres of land. And the significance of the argument is that that 1.4 million acres was never given. If you give one group of society from Europe the land for nothing, for just coming over, and then you trying to tell the Métis when they got this land that that is the extinguishment of your rights, it's a crock, it's not going to happen.
Hey, hey, la belle rivière coudre avec pour moi, j'aime mieux que baiser boire avec un eau baxa. Hey, hey, la belle fille, ça me dit danser, plus de belle fun avec ma Indian spa. Hey, Jean-Pierre, je devais passer dans la voie qui te mousse, ça t'en allait. Come on, you little bugger, can you hear you one with a gun in your back and your horse on the run? Read a bit of down, grandpapa, mom, tu me dis, faut que tu t'en vas. Come on, you little bugger, can you hear you one? Better jump on your horse, you better get gone. In Hey, sorry, like an old mother hen. Hey, hey, Jean-Pierre dans l'air bien pris. I wish a little gal would marry me. Tomorrow morning I'll go see son père. I tell him that I love his little filly there. I'll go with him to see Monsieur Lecture. I'll tell him ding-a-ling, I'm gonna change my way. Find a lip down, diddle-dip down, now this is the story of a one lone man up against a white in the Indian clan, trying to make a living on the lone prairie with a British squad that I married. I never him down, diddle-dip down,
Riel's main tactic was to send a petition to Ottawa outlining the combined grievances of the Saskatchewan Métis and settlers. He also met with the First Nations of the region, who accused the federal government of not respecting the Indian treaties. Fine day. Big Bear. Wandering Spirit. Pound Maker.
Kitaski naoma. Moi kahkiotegi uudengaatig. Igua apsis kawitamigoya.
The rapid collapse of the buffalo herd was causing near starvation among the First Nations. Crops had been poor for years, and most settlers were facing famine. Many bands were starving, and Ottawa showed indifference to their plight. This was exacerbated by a reduction in government assistance and by a general failure of Ottawa to live up to its treaty obligations. Riel increasingly believed he was a prophet from God, sent to lead his people. He had been plagued by religious delusions in the past, and now his visions and militancy were becoming stronger. By early 1885, Riel formed a provincial government and a small military force. Riel and Dumont were supported by hard-working Métis families, and these were the men and women who would fight for Métis rights. Gabriel Dumont was the general of the Métis army when the Métis were committed to armed rebellion. Riel's words were threatening, suggesting the Métis would fight to the death for their cause. To help the mounted police in Winnipeg's 90th Battalion, Ottawa was sending 500 additional Canadian troops to intimidate the Métis, led by Major General Fred Middleton. When General Middleton's troops entered Métis land, what resulted was the resistance of 1885.
Let's see. Battle of Fish Creek this is where the Métis general, shall we say, Gabriel Dumont, Riel's battle general, decided that he was going to. He knew the troops were on the way. They had scouts out, and of course, what happened there was he decided to intercept them, and he went to Fish Creek a few miles away, and attacked General Middleton's troops as they were advancing on Batoche. And the consequence of that, he held them up, and they took casualties on both sides, but I think they killed about 20 of the General Middleton's troops. But once again, they withdrew. This is the Battle of Cutknife Creek. It led up to a certain time, prior to the actual time when General Middleton's troops actually confronted the Métis, shall we say, guerrillas, or the fighters in their rifle pits at Batoche, and it led up to that.
saigner le sang.
Vous méritez des félicitations, ainsi que votre chef, Monsieur Dumont. Donnons-lui 3 hurrahs.
The Métis fought valiantly, but unfortunately they didn't have the ammunition. Like Middleton had brought in a couple of cannon and also the Gatling gun. And of course, 800,000 troops, military fashion, English style. He was an English general. And of course, this is the capture of Batoche, where eventually the Métis ran out of ammunition for the most part. They were firing nails and everything in their guns back at the attacking troops. And finally, they just ran out of ammunition. A lot of them were killed, and they were overrun by the attacking troops with their bayonets. And a lot of them were bayoneted right in the trenches. And and essentially, the Battle of Batoche was over.
And while Canadian soldiers burnt the homes of innocent Métis families, Prime Minister John A. Macdonald sat in his office in Ottawa, drinking gin.
But to get back to the Battle of Batoche again, I don't know what significant things came as a result of that. Well, Louis Riel surrendered. He gave himself up, although in some accounts they say he was captured. Gabriel Dumont, he knew they were after his head too. He fled to the United States. And apparently he got amnesty from the government after that, and so he did come back, and he ended up living near Saskatoon. I think he died in 1906. So that's Gabriel Dumont, considered the battle general of the Battle of Batoche, among other things, and the Battle of Fish Creek as well. And so Louis Riel, when he gave himself up, he thought he'd get a fair trial, because essentially he was an American citizen at the time. They had a trial. They charged him with treason under an old British law, obscure one to say the least. And the consequence of that, they only had 6 jurors, none of whom were a jury of his peers. And his lawyers even tried to say he was almost insane because he was religiously devout in his faith. And he even called himself one time as the Redeemer. you know. So he said, no, I'm going to go on my own defense, and I guess he was found guilty, to make a long story short, and he was hanged.
Poundmaker surrendered to General Middleton.
This been nothing done. More than gaan was. Nigihin gaan. Kapasquat. Nieta payotiga bidostian. Muy gastin goyan. Matsuga. Gastioki guay. Guay stigis pike.
Big Bear was eventually apprehended.
La vie, sans avoir la dignité d'un être intelligent, ne vaut pas la peine de l'avoir.
In the end, Louis Riel was charged with high treason and hanged by the neck in Regina.
Mon peuple vont dormir pour une centaine d'années, mais lorsqu'ils se réveillent, ça sera les artistes qui vont leur redonner leurs esprits.
In 1884, half-breed horsemen knocking at the back door. Louis, Louis, you're wanted by the people are hungry, people need food. Down the traders and the buffalo skinners, they send them back from where they came and bring the good days back again right now. Send them back and fight right now. There's a half-breed scout and a fire-pot can. Then on the Pasqua, Big Bear, everywhere he urged in his back then. He told them there he was, laying on the wisdom. The people are hungry, they just stand a dying now. Well, the priests are upset and the agents up and angry. Letters are flying from each seat to water wall. Better stop the man no matter what the cost is. Louis Riel is putting down the system. Defeated, for Rome in the jailhouse now. Old Middleton's met the Fish Creek fight. They're running like the devil from the half-breed mine. Beaten by the breeze and left the lost. Showed up later at the town of Matasha with a Gatling gun. They're ripping up the ground and a half-breed bullet shaking up the sky. It sure is a good day to stand to die right now against oppression, and we're fighting right now. The RCM horsemen, the governor, the horsemen sent out the armies, thought they would arrest him. Told young Louis that he was gonna hang high. Well, you can't get away with putting down the government. Defeated, Rome in the piss can now. Well, the rest of the story has often been told. They hung young Louis so brave and so bold. Tried so hard for working for the people, gave up his life for working for the people. I know another man who did that too, that hung on a cross in Calvary, working for the people against oppression, and it took his life.
I'm J. Cardinal Villeneuve. Thanks for watching.